Hi, B Nation. Welcome back to another edition of the Irish Breakdown Podcast. It is August 1st, folks. We are in a new month, which means we are in the month in which college football season is going to start. I'm super excited. I hope you guys are excited about this too. I just think this is going to be such a fun college football season, not just for Notre Dame, but just in general. As I'm going through my conference predictions, we're going to have the Big 12 still coming up when Vince gets back in town. I'm going to kind of redo my rankings a little bit, put them on the site, put them on the message board. Got some really fun stuff planned. I'm just excited. I'm just excited about what this season is going to be in college football and really looking forward to it. Just in general, just as a football fan as well as a Notre Dame fan, I'm just very excited about what we're going to see. But obviously, right now, the focus is on Notre Dame. And today, Notre Dame had their second practice of fall camp. We got to see the first 5 periods of that. So I'm going to, part of today's show, this is going to be a super, super long show, but part of today's show is going to talk about what I saw in practice today. And I focus mainly on the offense. I'll explain why that is. And then in part 2 of today's show, I'm going to talk about the injury to Gabriel Rubio, specifically what that is. And we don't know how long he's going to be out, but basically what does Notre Dame do from here? And what does this mean for Notre Dame? That'll be part 2 of today's show. So I'm very much looking forward to that. And then tomorrow I'll be back for a mailbag. Vince will be back with me tomorrow, so that'll be good. And so we'll have a full mailbag tomorrow. You guys get all your questions in. We'll have a 5-period availability again tomorrow, I believe. So we will be able to get started at 1:00 tomorrow. We'll make sure we get that practice report up a little bit sooner than we did today, but so that way we can be ready to rock and roll for tomorrow's mailbag. So I'm very, very excited about that. Just like I said, 30 days away from Notre Dame kicking off the 2024 season. Just extremely fired up about that. And I believe Notre Dame is considered week 1. And so we are actually even closer to just the kickoff of the college football season overall. I believe, and I'm actually pulling this up now, but I believe the first game is Saturday, August 24th. So we're almost 3 weeks away from being able to wake up and watch Florida State and Georgia Tech square off against each other in Ireland. There's also Montana State and New Mexico game. I may watch that. SMU Nevada will also play that day. Delaware State, Hawaii at midnight that day. So very, very much looking forward to that and forward to college football season kicking off. So I hope you all are ready. Hope you guys are ready to go. I'm excited about what we're going to see, and I look forward to tomorrow's practice as well. I'll try to focus a little bit more on the defense tomorrow than we could today. But sometimes that can be hard. But I'm ready to get rocking and rolling, folks. So let's talk some Notre Dame football. All right, as I said, part 1 today is going to be about the Notre Dame football practice. Today we got to see 5 periods of today's practice, and just a couple observations. Look, you always kind of have reactions to the first day, and one of the concerns about kind of taking conclusions from a practice is you don't know what the coaches are building on. And I'll talk about, some of the reasons why that can be challenging, but also it's like why you evolve, your opinion evolves. So just one of the big takeaways that I had for today was similar to yesterday. It was good to see Notre Dame do something today that built on one of the takeaways we had in day 1. So it's kind of good to see confirmation that this is continuing. One is obviously Marcus Freeman's always valued competition, but what we're seeing today is we're seeing an even greater emphasis on maximizing reps and working with tempo in practice. And when I mean tempo, I don't just mean, you have an up-tempo offense, but just an aggressiveness about the way you're going about things. And, so yesterday we talked about how they were actually practicing on 2 parts of the field. And we saw a little bit of that today. When you get to practice, they're working on some inside run stuff and some handoff stuff and some throwing game stuff. And they've got 2 fields going. As we go outside, you've got, one group down working on run game stuff on the end zone. You've got another group down here working on things. You've got, I think it was Kenny Minchie and CJ Carr and Anthony Rizak were with one group, and you've got some of the GAs and analysts working with that group. And then the other end, you've got, Steve Angeli and Riley Leonard and sort of the first and second team group. And then the main assistant coaches down there, and they're just getting a ton of reps. And then we go to the individual period, and Notre Dame is working on a concept or various concepts, but basically the way they would go about it is they would line up in this particular play. And I'm sure that, they can do it out of empty. They can do it out of 3-by-1. But for this particular day, they were doing 2-by-2. So you have 2 receivers to one side, 2 to another. So what they were working on is just a typical 2-by-2 formation that Mike Denbrock does. So you've got the slot and the Z to one side, and you've got the boundary, the X, and the tight end to the other side. And they're just working on different pass concepts. And the way they were doing it is instead of just having you kind of run a route and combination, they were running a route combination, but one guy at a time. And so Riley Leonard jumps up first rep, and he's getting a chance to work with, at that time, which is sort of the first group of receivers, which for today, and I'll get more into this, was Micah Gilbert, and I think it was Mitchell Evans. Mitchell Evans at tight end, Jaden Greathouse at Z, or at the slot, and then you had Chris Mitchell at the Z. So he lines up and just takes a snap, makes the cadence, takes a snap, and then boom, throws a quick route into the boundary to on this particular one, it was a comeback to Micah Gilbert. Then the very next play, actually the first one, it was actually all hitches. So it was like quick hitches and options. So boom, hit a quick option to Micah Gilbert, quickly lines back up, boom, hits a little quick option to Mitchell Evans, boom, lines back up, hits a little quick option to Jaden Greathouse, boom, hits a far hitch to Chris Mitchell. I mean, it's rapid fire. He's taking the snap, throwing the ball, getting it out, and then quickly lining up. Next guy's ready to go, get the cage. So there's working with some urgency, some tempo, while also not rushing and making sure that, hey, once we line up, we're ready to go, but we're not like, oh my gosh, I got to quickly get the ball out. But there was tempo in between each rep. So as soon as you're done throwing, you get lined back up, and then now there's some calm, let's go, boom, and then we're getting the ball out. And what that's doing is that's getting a ton of reps. You're getting a lot of action in, but you're also allowing the quarterback to throw to every route in the route tree, or not shouldn't route tree, the route in each concept. So first time, as I mentioned, they had some quick throws. Next time, he goes out there and he bangs a comeback throw to Micah Gilbert. Then he hits a seam ball to Mitchell Evans. And then there's a stop route to Jaden Greathouse. And then a comeback to the field to Chris Mitchell. And so they're working on all these different pass concepts that we all know that Mike Denbrock runs, but it's one guy at a time, and then boom, 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 boom. And so that way you're throwing every route. So a lot of times in the past, you'll kind of run it where you have two guys go at a time. And you'll kind of read it, and you'll throw to one, and then maybe somebody else does the other, or that guy doesn't get a ball. Other times you may do it to where, you throw, so you have, let's say you've got your four quarterbacks. You've got Leonard, Angeli, Minchie, and Carr. They line up, and it's okay. You're working on your boundary hitch. So let's say you're working on a boundary smash, just for an example. So you've got number one's going to run a little smash hitch concept. Number two is going to run a corner. Okay. So you drop back, and then I throw the hitch, and then next guy goes up. He throws a hitch. Next guy throws a hitch. Or I throw the hitch, come back up, throw the corner, and then the next guy goes. And then later on, you work on your backside. This is just getting a rep in with every throw. And I really liked the way they were going about it, because there was an emphasis on tempo, and there was an emphasis on making sure that everybody's running the right route. And then obviously an emphasis on Riley Leonard, then Steve Angeli, then Kenny Minchie, CJ Carr getting a chance to throw every route within a concept and within a scheme, which I thought was really good to see. So I was pleased by that. Even like a running back, a receiver, the way that Mike Brown's going through drills, it's just we're getting work in, getting reps in, but still teaching, a lot of teaching. Joe Rudolph doing the same thing with the offensive line. You can see Al Washington down there at the D-line. Just it's getting work in, getting reps in, but not doing it in a way to where you're so emphasizing reps that you're not getting teaching in. And as I thought about what we talked about with yesterday's show about why we heard so much vocalness from the coaches, I think this is part of it, because if we're going to get a lot of work in, and we're going to be working with tempo, and it isn't like old school football where you run a play and you're going to run it 5 times in a row until you get it right. You're kind of focusing on, you're focusing on just reps over quality. And back in the day, it was quality over reps, right? Now this is kind of like a little bit of both. So you're going fast, you're going with tempo, you're doing what you need to do, but you've got to make sure that you're still teaching. And so that would make sense why the coaches were so much more vocal yesterday, because you've got to go out there and and figure out, hey, how do we teach, but also get all the reps that we need. And it looks like that's what Notre Dame's trying to do. So I'm just really impressed with the pace of practice And I'm impressed with the amount of teaching that's going on. You think about, why am I hearing Mike Denbrock so much, Mike Mickens so much, Al Washington so much yesterday at practice, and then again today. It's that right there. We're trying to get a lot of work done, but we've got to teach. And it was good to see that evidence and kind of out there for us to see again on day 2. So let's kind of get into some specifics. I focus mainly on quarterbacks, running backs, receivers, and offensive line today. The offensive line was more about, who was out there. Spent a lot of time watching the quarterbacks. The reason I didn't watch a lot of the defense, just so you guys understand, is so when they're inside, so like during the spring, I'm able to get kind of a full practice report, even in 5 periods. I can see the offense, I can see the defense, because they're in that, just on that one field, and then we're up above looking down, so I can kind of see a little bit of everything. Well, today they obviously did the stretching and things and some special team stuff inside, but then we went outside. And so when they go outside, they've got 2 full practice fields outside as well. And so the offense is on one, and we can stand over there. And then on the far field is the defense. And so the defense is on the far field. And so it's kind of, and there's like a big tower, and there's just a lot of things kind of in between that make it hard to just see what's going on the defensive side of the field. So it's just, it makes it tougher. And today they did a little bit of work between the offense and defense in the secondary, which I'll talk about here in a little bit. But that's why with a lot of the drills and the reps and the things along those lines, I focus on the offense today. So starting with the quarterbacks, yesterday the quarterbacks not sharp going through warm-ups. Today, I shouldn't say the quarterbacks. I thought Kenny and CJ were fine. It was Riley and Steve were not real sharp yesterday. Today during drills, a lot sharper. I thought both quarterbacks were a lot better, just kind of a lot more crisp. Riley wasn't rushing his mechanics, which was causing balls to sail. He had one mistake like that, which I'll get into during a throw. But, Steve was better today. He was a lot more sharp. He was snapping the ball off. It was coming down. Nice trajectory out of his hands. He wasn't sailing like he was yesterday. So that was good to see. There just was a bit more calm today in the quarterback room than there was yesterday. And so I thought the result was the quarterbacks, by and large, just looking sharper than they did yesterday. Getting into some of the specifics, I talked about just the different routes that they threw. Speaking on Riley Leonard, I thought he looked much better today. He had 2 misses today that I thought were balls he's got to do a better job on. Number one was he threw a far field comeback, far hash comeback, where he drops back and he opens his hips too much, and the ball kind of dives down on Chris Mitchell. Now, I thought Chris should have still caught it, but it was not a good ball by Riley. And so he just kind of opened it up too much. And you heard the correction. I don't know what specifically it was, but it sounded like they were kind of correcting that. But it just opened his hips. And when your quarterback opens his hips too much, especially when you're a guy with a lower arm angle like Riley does, it's going to kind of drive that down and cause the ball to sail and go down. And that's what happened to Riley on that. And then there was a post throw that he threw too far in. He needs to get it back out and kind of over the top a little bit more to Chris Mitchell. I thought Chris should have done a better job making a play on that one as well, but that was a ball that he needs to miss. Outside of that, I thought Riley was pretty sharp. He threw a gorgeous seam throw to Mitchell Evans. They were running a burst corner at one point in time. Burst corner is an outside guy, kind of works in vertical, then breaks to the corner. So it looks like this. He just drilled Bo Collins, perfectly placed ball. The next 2 quarterbacks, Steve and Kenny, both missed it, and they missed it by a bunch. So he certainly threw the best ball there. His seam stuff was really good. Threw a really nice outcut, like deep outcut to Jaden Greathouse, 10-yard speed out to the field. Good zip on the ball, got it out there. Jaden caught it and was able to catch it and get upfield. A lot of time. The other guys, all the out throws were kind of right on the sideline. So they were catching it and then, two-stepping and going out of bounds. Riley threw his with enough time where Greathouse could catch it and then turn upfield and stay upfield. So it was good to see that. His far field comebacks, again, as I said, he was opening up a little bit and he wasn't quite as sharp there. But a lot of his other throws I thought were very good. Steve, on the other hand, I thought threw the ball well on the field stuff. So I thought Steve, and he got decent zip on the ball, but he completed a couple of those deep comebacks. Thought decent ball placement. His outcuts were for the most part on target. He was late throwing an outcut to Jordan Faison, and he kind of carried him out of bounds. Jordan tried to stay in bounds, couldn't stay in bounds. Missed on a corner throw, but he threw a really nice seam ball to, I believe it was Kevin Bauman. Steve threw a really nice boundary seam throw to Kevin Bauman, which is good. That's a ball that Steve is a little inconsistent with in the past, but today he was right on point with it. And honestly, I thought at first that he overthrew him just because, Steve has a high release, and sometimes guys with high releases, the ball can look like it's going to go a little bit, but it dropped perfectly onto Kevin. Kevin ran underneath it and made the play, so I thought he was good. Kenny, again, was very sharp today. I thought Kenny Minchie, he had one miss on a burst corner that I talked about, but other than that, Kenny was sharp. He looked confident. This is the most command that I've seen from Kenny from just a presence standpoint. There's just not a lot of, in the past, Kenny kind of throw, and he just kind of going through the motions. Today, Kenny looked like he had purpose to his actions today, and that was very good to see. Getting into the team period, as I mentioned, Riley had the deep miss to Chris Mitchell. I thought he was good outside of that. He was accurate, was getting the ball over the middle. He was on point, making his reads and things along those lines. So that was good to see. When we got the team with Steve, it was kind of the same thing. It was that we talk about a lot. He threw 3 balls during the team period, and every single one was to the check down. Every single one. And one of them totally made sense. The other one looked like a good read. He looked deep, came down underneath. And then the third one was just, you never even let the play develop. You just kind of bang the check down. And that's something that Steve is going to have to be more willing to do, is like, look, we know you can hit the check down. You've got to be willing to try to get that ball downfield. Now, what I don't want him to do is kind of what CJ Carr did. And CJ, during his period, had a really good read where he kind of came back to a deep stop route, just fit the ball in between 3 guys. Okay, good. You went with the read, you threw with good timing, and you were able to fit it in. Then later, CJ saw the seam, and there was maybe like a little tiny window there if he'd have thrown it on time, but he didn't, and he forced it into triple coverage, and Rod Hurd breaks it up, and honestly should have picked it off, to be honest with you. So there's that fine line between, being aggressive and taking those shots and forcing the ball, and then there's a fine line between, okay, I don't want to force a ball, and I'm too conservative with my throws. And that's always been the criticism I've had of Steve. And we saw it in the spring game. We saw it in the Jersey scrimmage. And then we saw it again yesterday and today. So I just want to see him be a little bit more comfortable with the progressions where he's just reading things a little bit quicker. He's going to have to speed that process up, because when you're playing against this secondary, those windows close up quickly. And we've seen that the last couple of days from this Notre Dame team. And when you talk about the defense, for example, and what you see from the secondary today, just from the 5 periods we saw, if you don't throw the ball on time, the window's gone. I mean, it's gone. I mean, I was really impressed with watching Rod Hurd run around today. Just the feel he has for the defense, closing on the football, and just the different things he's doing. You see Xavier Watts obviously driving on routes. Jaden Mickey, I thought, had another good day today. I saw Jaden Mickey run step for step with Chris Mitchell on a post route. That was good to see. Just because we've seen on film that Chris can run. We've seen on film what Chris can do. To see Jaden Mickey, I thought, when he had this, took the step on him, Chris Mitchell had just a step on Jaden, not even a step. And Jaden did a really nice job of staying underneath him. And Chris should have worked back over, but it would have been tough to work back over because of the way that Jaden Mickey played it. So the point is, you're just not going to have a lot of room to work against this secondary. And then I don't know if you guys saw the tweet Notre Dame put out from practice today, but they had Leonard Moore intercepting a pass intended for Jaden Thomas today. So this secondary, it's really good. It's very good, and you're just not going to have a lot of room to work. And so I think that's a thing where Steve is going to have to get a lot better about that. But it's also a good thing that the secondary is the way that it is, because with it's going to force Steve to read quicker. He has to read quicker if he's going to have success with his defense. And so I think it's going to end up being good for him as long as he's willing to, hey man, let's maybe get this ball over the middle a little bit. Let's try this throw. Let's not be afraid to make this throw. Because Steve, when he's got a one-on-one, is an aggressive downfield guy. He just, when it's within the process of reading a defense, there's not that same level of aggressiveness, and he's going to have to do that. But then you look at CJ, and I thought he forced a couple balls during the team period today. Kenny kind of took what they gave him. I thought he did a good job of that. When there was a chance to get the ball downfield, he did, but he took he was willing to take some of that short stuff, but he got it out quick, allowed guys to catch, square up, and get vertical. So it's good to see that today. And then, of course, we saw Riley being aggressive, throwing the ball down the field as well. So I thought overall, the quarterbacks had a solid day, did some solid work, looked sharper than they did yesterday. Still a work in progress, as you're always going to be in day two. But it was good to see that. Receiver-wise, Bo Collins impressed me again today. He's not an elite athlete. He's not, you're not going to confuse him for Will Fuller or anything like that. And he's not like as explosive as like Chase Claypool was. Reminds me a lot more of Miles Boykin than he did, because I was surprised that Miles Boykin ran as fast as he did, because Miles didn't show that type of explosiveness on the football field. But he's still very good player for Notre Dame. He reminds me a lot of Miles in that regard. I love the work I'm seeing from Jaden Greathouse. Still the number one guy going through drills. I mean, every day, Jaden Greathouse, number one guy. He looked good. Jaden Thomas, again, smooth, fluid, caught the ball relatively well. Today in the boundary, yesterday it was Jaden Thomas, Bo Collins was 2, Jaden Thomas was 1, and then Micah Gilbert was 3. Today, from what I could see, it was Micah Gilbert 1, Jaden Thomas 2, and Bo Collins at 3, and then another drill they were flipped where Bo Collins is 2, Jaden Thomas is a 3. So you're seeing them kind of mix guys around, trying to get different receivers work with the different quarterbacks, which is what you want to see. I wouldn't read too much into that as if this guy's here. I think it's really comes down to when we would do this in fall camp, or when I've seen Notre Dame do it in the past. It's, hey, look, we've got these different guys. I want to make sure that Mike is getting reps with Riley, and that Mike is getting reps with Steve, and Bo's getting reps with Steve, and Bo's getting reps with Riley, and same with Jaden Thomas. And because all three of those guys, I think, are going to play this year in the boundary. And so we saw a little bit of that today. We saw it in the offensive line as well, which I'll get to. But so that's kind of the way that they worked in the boundary. But I thought Micah Gilbert looked sharp today. He plays a lot of confidence for a freshman. And I also liked what I saw from Cam Williams today. The thing with Cam is when Cam is just like, hey, you're running a go route, or you're running a post route, or an over route, like, Cam looks really good. You can see the elite athleticism. You can see the speed. You can see the burst. But there's a lot of times where Cam just didn't look comfortable with what he was doing. He'd run a post, but maybe not break it off at the right angle, or he'd run have a go, and he'd look great doing it in routes on air. But then he's got to beat a press, and he doesn't look as great beating the press. He's not as comfortable, and it slows him down. I thought today, this was probably the most assertive that I thought Cam has been, at least for the periods that we saw. And he caught the ball really well. He kind of fought the ball a little bit in the spring, because I think he was in his head. He was thinking a lot about, I got to do this technique-wise, I got to do that technique-wise, and all those different things. And that would kind of slow him down a little bit physically, and he would kind of fight the ball. Today, he was catching it clean. He had a really nice, I think it was Kenny threw him a deep comeback. And on a deep comeback, you don't want a receiver stopping on a comeback. Meaning, like, he gets out of his break, and the angle of the ball forces him to stop and kind of go back. You want to kind of run him into the ball. So your throw needs to be, he's coming out of his break at a 45-degree downhill angle. You want to throw that ball so when he gets out of his break, he is running to the football. If you throw it and stop it, that allows the DB to kind of recover and get his hands on the football. And so what can happen with a young receiver is, if you throw the ball to where he's got to run to the ball, a young receiver sometimes will not accelerate out of that cut, and then he's late getting to the ball. So to see Cam today get out of that cut, accelerate downhill, and get to the football, I thought was really good to see, because he hasn't been doing that a lot. And then he snatched the ball out of the air, made a really nice catch on it. So it was encouraging to see Cam is starting to, at least on some reps, is starting to look like, okay, I've kind of figured out some of this stuff. And so that's obviously a positive for what he's doing. I thought KK Smith looked really good going through drills. He's a very explosive guy. He's just got to play stronger. That's the thing with KK so far is when it's just drills or one-on-ones or routes on air, he looks really athletic, but he's just going to have to be a little bit more physical working against defensive backs when they're getting hands on them. That's something that KK is going to have to work on. There's no doubt about it. But I mean, Jordan Faison looks real comfortable outside. His route running is sharp today, sharper than it was last year. Jordan was a good route run on certain areas, but there were certain little things that they were working on. One of the things I love today, I won't get into too many specifics because I don't know what they would want me to say publicly or not. But one of the things that I liked today that they were doing with the receivers was Mike Brown. So they were running like in-breaking routes. Okay, I won't say which one, but they're working on in-breaking routes. And so Mike Brown would get up there and Jaden Greathouse would go. And so he would kind of line up over top of him, but then at the snap, he would kind of widen. And then Jaden would have to attack his leverage. You guys have heard me say, what do I always talk about? So for you young receivers coaches, there's two things that you want to say when you're teaching receivers their release, right? It's you want to attack the DB's leverage and have a specific aiming point. I've always thought the aiming point should be your outside armpit, just because it overemphasizes what, kind of really pushing that guy. So if you attack his inside armpit, then you're still inside of him. He's not threatened. Even though you're attacking his leverage, he's not threatened by you. But in this case, if you kind of attack that outside armpit, outside shoulder, however you want to say it, I liked armpit because it gave him if outside shoulder, he starts attacking out here, might be a little too wide. And so I know I've said outside shoulder on the show before, but when I talk to my receivers, it's really an outside armpit because I want him kind of aiming here as opposed to getting outside. Because if he goes outside, then now he's too far outside. And so we saw Mike Brown teaching that today. So you saw on this in-breaking route where Jaden Greathouse starts to work vertically, but he's working for width, attacking the leverage that Mike Brown was lined up at. So I actually thought it was going to be a seam route, the way that he was attacking. And then he quickly snaps it off and works back inside. And I was like, all right, I love to see that. Well, then the next rep lines up the same way, but at the snap, he kind of squats inside. And then the receiver was like, not quite as sure what to do. So you saw that he was working with the receivers on, hey, you've got to understand how to get open. It's not just you're coming off and because the problem with routes on air is there's no thought. You're just, what you're doing. But the way that Coach Brown was doing it with them today, it was, hey, this is a thinking man's game. You've got to still be thoughtful of how you're attacking this route. So I was very happy to see that. And the receivers, we're hit or miss on how they did it. I thought Jaden Greathouse looked very comfortable with it. Jordan Faison looks very comfortable with it. Jordan's having and this is where it started, that part of the conversation started, but Jordan's starting to show a little bit more of an understanding of some of the nuanced parts. Like Jordan was a good route runner when it came to the top ends. He was quick in and out of breaks. You think about snapping that post route off against, so it was kind of more of a backside seam, but really snapping off the top end when he got the leverage with him. You think of the little quick pivot route that he ran against Oregon State for the touchdown that he had. It works kind of like a reverse pivot, beats the guy back inside. I mean, when he's doing that stuff, he's really good. But Jordan had to learn some of the nuances of, proper stem and things along those lines. Today, he looked really sharp with that, looked really comfortable with that, doing that outside. So I was happy to see that. I mean, I was really overall pleased with what we saw from the receivers. I thought Chris Brown had 2 drops that I didn't like. There was another time I thought he should have played the ball better. He's just you can tell the timing is off a little bit with him and the other quarterbacks, with both Steve and Riley, but especially Riley. But then there was another throw later where Riley was rolling left and he threw it and it just kind of went down, and Chris did a great job of accelerating downhill and just snatching his arms down low and making the catch for what would have been about an 8-9 yard gain. So I was happy to see that because you could tell he was frustrated with the 2 early drops. He was frustrated with himself and probably a little bit with the ball. But to see him kind of bounce back and make a couple really nice throws was good to see from Chris Mitchell. But solid day from him. Bounce back, like I said, bounce back from those 2 early drops. But I do want to obviously see him not have those drops. But his quickness is good. His feel for the game is good. Liked what I've seen from him so far. For Notre Dame so far in practice. I'm trying to think of a couple other guys that we saw today that I wrote about. Let me just check my practice report notes and see if there's anybody that I'm missing from here. So, yeah, Logan Saldate. So when he's running routes, he looks a little not slow. That's not the word I wanted to use. He's thinking way too much, real choppy, just uncertain of what he's doing, over exaggerating the routes, things along those lines. But when he's going through drills, you can really see the quickness from Logan. Like, he moves pretty well, and he's a little bit taller, a little bit longer than I thought he was going to be. So he's got some athleticism. He just has to he's like kind of like deliberate. Yes, yes. USMA, thank you. Yes, deliberate. He's a little too deliberate in how he's kind of going about things. So I appreciate that. We're talking about Soldate, but that's where Cam was in the spring. Like, that was the issue with Cam Williams in the spring, is Cam was real deliberate. He was thinking. You could tell he wasn't turning loose, because he was like, okay, what am I doing here? Am I on the fourth step? Am I on the fifth step? Hold on. Am I going to the cone? Am I going past the cone? Like, what am I supposed to do here? And you start thinking, and it slows you down. And so Logan's going through a little bit of that the first 2 days as well. But when it's just like, hey, you're doing a cone drill, you're just coming off at speed, and he looks really quick, really athletic. Just overall, looking at this receiving core, I really like just the athleticism of this group. You see a lot of good quickness. There's different types of athletes. You've got guys like Bo Collins and Jaden Thomas, who are more smooth and fluid. Jaden's a lot better coming out of his breaks than he was before. You've got Jaden Greathouse, who's just really like a unique athlete. He's not like Jaden Thomas. He's a little bit twitchier than Jaden Thomas, but he doesn't have like the burst of like a Jaden Harrison or Jordan Faison. He's a very unique athlete, but just knows how to play. Then you've got those kind of long strider speed guys like KK Smith and Cam Williams and Chris Mitchell. So very unique group. And then Jaden Harrison's kind of off on his own thing too, is a little bit different type of athlete. Almost kind of looks a lot like Chris Tyree did last year. He's a little bit shiftier than Chris was. But what I mean is, Chris looked like a running back that was trying to play slot. Jaden Harrison's more of a natural receiver than Chris Tyree was, but like his build, shorter, kind of has a running back body a little bit, but he's got that explosiveness and he's caught the ball pretty well coming out of breaks too. So I really liked what I saw from him today athletically. Now, where you saw Jaden Harrison struggle a little bit today was on some of the times when Coach Brown would move and make him have to read and react. He wasn't quite as comfortable with, okay, what do I do? So you can tell he didn't really have that hammered into him at Marshall, where he could just kind of use his speed. He's going to have to obviously continue to learn that. So these things are going to be, these type of drills are going to be good for him. I know there's some concern yesterday about Mitchell Evans not going through practice. My understanding is he's healthy. It's just, there's just patience with him, just kind of getting him up to full speed. I don't know if he went through team or anything 7-on-7 like that today, but he was out there doing routes on air, and he looks athletic and fast, and you caught the ball well. So it was good to see him. Kevin Bauman was out there. It's good to see Kevin going through everything. And then, but the problem with him is you can see the effect of the injuries have had on Kevin Bauman. He just lumbers when he's running, and he catches the ball very well. He knows how to run routes. He just lumbers. He's just not the athlete he was when he first came to Notre Dame. And so that was now he may get better, again, he hasn't played football in a while. So he may get some of that juice back. He, maybe has a little bit of maybe too much weight on him right now, which can happen when you've had as many lower body injuries he's had. So he may work back into shape, but right now he's just lumbering a little bit, trying to kind of get back into where he needs to get to. So that's kind of what I saw from the pass catchers today. Outside of that, not a whole lot to see from that group. Let's talk about the running backs. Gosh, I wish you guys could see like what we're seeing from the running backs. Like, this is such an impressive group. Start off with Jeremiah Love. Wrote about this in the practice report. He is filled out really nicely. Like, you look at Jeremiah Love and he looks like a completely different athlete. You guys are going to see it when the season starts. And I don't know, like, if there's videos out that have Jeremiah Love in it. I'm not quite sure. But he's really thicker up here. Like, he's got a lot of extra armor on. He's filled out in the chest. His arms are thicker. He's a really good looking athlete. And anytime you see a guy go from like 195-ish to like 210 plus, which he did this offseason. I know the roster has not been updated yet. Actually, I'm going to check it again now. I'm checking it like every hour. I go and check the roster and see if they've updated the heights and weights yet, and they haven't. Let me just check here real quick to see if it's updated. Nope, still the same thing. They've got him listed at 206. He looks a lot thicker than 206 to me. He looks to be at least 210, 212 to me. I was talking to Ryan earlier today. He was talking to somebody, said he's up to 215 right now. But the thing is he has not lost the juice at all. If anything, he's got a little bit more juice now than he did because he's got some now grown man strength and weight room work to him. Super explosive. That's not going to that's going to surprise a grand total of 0 of you in the audience. None of you are going to be like, oh, Jeremiah loves explosive. Who knew? Here's what's been encouraging to me is obviously the filling out of the frame. That's huge. He's got to be, he needed that extra armor to be able to go through a full season. Here's the other thing I've liked about Jeremiah. He's number one guy going through drills. He's starting to show more of a leadership by how he goes about his business type of manner. You can see a command of that room coming from him. Like he is taking on sort of that, hey, I'm the guy. And what comes with being the guy, what comes with being the number one guy in the room is, dude, we need you to be the leader. You've got to set the tone with how you prepare each day. Now, I don't know where he's going to be in practice 3 and practice 4 and practice 20 and practice 25. But yesterday and today, especially today, because I focused a little bit more on him, you're seeing that. You're seeing that level of, okay, I've got to, when it's my rep, I got to jump up in there and be ready to go. And I've got to give great effort. You know, when you're seeing a little bit more in some of the inside run stuff where Jeremiah is just more willing to kind of hammer up into the line, you know, than he was before, where maybe he would try to make that big cut. But I love the quickness and the explosiveness you're seeing from him. Very talented guy. Still need to see a little bit more patience from him on some of the inside zone stuff, but he still looks, he looks really good athletically so far, and just starting to show a little bit more not maturity, because I mean he was freshman, but just he understands the role that's in front of him, and he's starting to show that he's embracing that role beyond just, hey, I got to be a playmaker. And if it wasn't for Jeremiah Love, I mean, we'd be doing nothing but talking about Jadarian Price. I mean, he looks great. I think Jadarian I mean, he was good last year with the burst. I mean, you saw it in games, but he's back to the juice he showed as a freshman. He's an incredibly explosive player. His ability to take that first step and explode downhill is really impressive. And there's a run yesterday. Actually, I think you guys might have seen it. We talked about it. If you watch the little highlights that Notre Dame put out, you guys saw what I'm talking about. There's that inside zone run where there's a lineman down. He had to hop over the guy, and he hits it, and he just goes. You can just see that balance. His agility and balance takes a back seat to nobody. I put that in my practice report. And he looks great. But you're also seeing Jadarian start to be a little bit more vocal, a little bit more assertive in how he's going about his business. And it's just a 1-2 punch that has you very excited about what this group can be. And those two guys are just dudes. And they're not getting talked about a ton outside of Notre Dame. You know, there's top 10 lists coming out, running backs, and they're not getting talked about. But, I mean, let's see what happens when the pads put on, folks. But I'm telling you, I'll be shocked if there's a more explosive 1-2 punch at running back than this duo. And they both look good. I mean, they're not just these little guys. I mean, Jadarian's short, but he reminds me a lot of Terrell Davis physically. You guys remember Terrell Davis with the Broncos? Like, Terrell was strong. Like, Terrell was muscular. He was strong, but he wasn't real big. He was 205, but he was a workhorse. And Terrell was absolutely a workhorse. Jadarian reminds me a lot like that. He's 205, 210. He's not real big, but he's really put together well, and he's got some workhorse traits to him as a player. And this 1-2 punch is really good. Jadarian shows more patience right now as a runner than Jeremiah, so Jeremiah's going to have to continue working on that. But those two guys are really, really impressive looking. And you know, Aeneas Williams steady today. You know, he looks clean and crisp going through drills. I love what I've seen from Kedron. He looks healthy. You don't see a lot of 230-pound guys that have the kind of nimble athleticism that Kedron showed in drills. Now, at times, his footwork is still kind of not where it needs to be. He's still learning what Coach McCullough wants. But when he's just kind of one step and go, quick plant, you know, they do this thing where the backs have to attack running back coaches all do this. You got to attack the bag, and then he'll move the bag to one side, and they've got to cut one way or the other. One thing that Coach McCullough really emphasizes is being real tight with that cut. A lot of guys take this crazy, jump cut on that. That's not what he's looking for. You do jump cuts in different drills. He's looking for attack, plant, and cut off of that. Kedron, really impressive when he makes the right decision. Really impressive there. I love the athleticism and balance. And then we didn't even talk about Devin Ford is also a really quality athlete. So that's one of the just athleticism. Just how do they look going through drills? How do they look athletically? I don't know that there's a more impressive position group on this team than the running backs. Again, we're just talking athletic ability. I'm not saying they're going to be the best position group. I'm not saying they're going to be the number one running back tandem in the country. I'm just saying athletically, talent-wise, there's nobody more impressive on this team athletically than this group. I mean, when you're talking about Aeneas Williams and Kedron Young as your 3 and 4 in whatever order, Devin Ford being your 5, right now, talent-wise. I'm talking talent-wise. You've got a heck of a room. And so I was able to watch them going through drills today, and boy, they're an impressive group. And I love how much Coach McCullough still emphasizes the little things in practice. I mean, he is on them nonstop about just the little things. And so I'm confident that Coach that Coach McCullough is going to get Jeremiah Love going on just the patience and things like that. So, we'll see how they go. And somebody asked him about pass pro in the chat. No idea, Ray, that they're not doing a lot of that right now. There's no pads on, so I don't care what they're doing in pass pro right now. I'll care more about that when the pads come on and we see that. So I don't have an answer for that. They weren't doing a lot of pass pro in the period that we saw today. They've been doing a lot of stuff, getting them out in space and letting them catch the football. So I don't have anything on that. Last thing is about the offensive line. Saw the offensive line today. So yesterday I was a little concerned about they had Pat Coogan at left guard and Rocco Spindler's the number 2 right guard behind Billy Stroud. And I'll be honest with you, I was a little bit nervous about that, and I spoke about that, but I should have taken my own advice of not overreacting too much to one practice. That's on me. I should have taken my own advice because today we saw Rocco Spindler with the ones at left guard and Pat Coogan as the number 2 right guard. So what that tells me is they are going to give a legit battle there, but they're also making sure that whoever doesn't win that battle is prepared to be sort of that swing guy. So that was good to see from them. You still had Emil Wagner as the number 1 right tackle. Jagasol still is the number 1 left tackle. Sullivan Abs was still the number 2 left guard. So, yes, that's on me. I assumed something about just Pat Coogan being the guy, and I don't know if I said it during the show, but I definitely said it on the message board. So that's why should always take your own advice, Bryan, right? Let it play out, right? Love it. Tommy Guns has it in there. Let it play out and see what happens in practice 2 and practice 3. And then if it's the same thing, then you can say something. So that's on me, everybody. I take that one. It was kind of good to see that today. Now, again, best man win, right? Best man win, but at least you feel like there's an opportunity there. From a performance standpoint, I thought Rocco looked good today, got good movement. He still has a tendency at times to stop his feet when he has contact, but overall played with good base and got pretty decent movement in the run game. Pat battles hard. The problem with Pat Coogan is just it's the same thing as you always do. He just is not a great athlete. And his lack of athleticism results in him being on the ground more than it does Rocco. Neither of them are very good athletes. But with Pat, it's again today, they're running I think it was an inside zone play, and he's coming off, and he just kind of loses his balance, and he just goes flying down and just clogs up the lane. And your coaches, get off the ground and stay off the ground. And not so much from a don't tackle standpoint, but you don't want offensive linemen going to the ground right away. You want them getting movement. You want them, especially when you're a zone team. In the zone, like if I'm running inside zone and the defensive tackle causes us to stalemate, that's a borderline win for the defense, if not a win for the defense. Anytime the zone stops and you've stopped there being any movement, that's a win, because zone is meant to be move, cut, right? And so when a guy goes down, that stops movement. You can't move anymore at that spot. And so you saw that today from Pat. He just got to do a better job of keeping his balance and staying up, and just gets a little bit overextended, right? A little bit, and just got a little upper body got too far away from his lower body, and he just went down. And those are the kind of things you're going to have to avoid. And that's something that was an issue for him at times last year. And it's an issue, at least an issue for him on a few snaps a day. But overall, I thought the O-line did a nice job of getting a decent push in some of the drills they had. I wasn't paying attention to who the defensive players were, to be honest with you. I didn't know if they were going against backups or first teamers or whatever. But I did think they did a pretty decent job today on the zone stuff of getting a real nice push inside. But so center, left tackle, right guard, right tackle, all the same today with the first and second team. Left guard and number 2 right guard were a little bit different from what we saw today. I did see a couple nice blocks from Sam Pendleton today when I was, because like they were going some run game stuff at the same time they were doing some pass stuff. So I'm kind of going like this, right? Going like this and trying to get a look and figuring out kind of what they were doing. I did look over there a couple times, saw Sam Pendleton get a couple really nice blocks in there at centers with the number 2 group at center. So that was good to see as well. And so that's what I saw on today's practice, everybody. I think secondary-wise, a couple things from secondary. Jaden Mickey has been good the first 2 days, running vertically on stuff, coming downhill quickly, closing on things that are sort of in that no-cover zone. He's got to fly downhill, make a tackle. Rod Hurd was super active today. Liked what I saw from Rod. That was good to see. I thought the linebackers are doing a better job overall as a unit of kind of getting up underneath stuff and closing on routes. A couple times they were late at will of responding to a front side crosser. They're going to have to obviously get a little bit quicker reacting to that. But overall, I thought the defense is kind of what you'd expect early, right? Like they're on top of it. They are experienced. They know what they're doing. And so that was good to see. And you're seeing a lot of different linebackers doing a lot of different things for them. So that was that's what we saw today. So I was pleased by what I saw. A lot of competition again, but a lot of athleticism and really like what this team looks like. So again, so far, and that's day 2 with no pads on, right? So everything should be taken in proper context. Really impressed with what you saw on day 2 with no pads on. And like what I see from this team, tempo wise, work wise, they're getting a lot of good work in so far in camp, and that'll certainly make you happy. So that's what it is, right? You want to win the day. Win the day. Did we get better today? That's your focus as a coach. Did we get better today than we were yesterday? And from at least through the first 5 periods, the offense was sharper today through 5 periods than they were yesterday through 5 periods. Now, again, I don't know what they did during the team period. I don't know what they did on some of the other stuff, but just as far as how they looked through the first 5 periods of practice, today, a little sharper than they were yesterday at all spots, quarterback, running back, receiver, O-line, all of it. And that's where you want to be. And tomorrow, the goal is going to be better tomorrow than you were today. And that's kind of what you're doing, building up to that point of time in the season. So now that's my practice report for today, our 5 periods. I'll have another one. So tomorrow's mailbag, what we have not decided yet is if we're going to start off practice or the mailbag with a little mini practice report, or if we may record something and just kind of put it out separately. Most likely what we'll do at the beginning of the mailbag tomorrow is just start off with a 20-minute practice report and just kind of go through some of the things that we saw in practice tomorrow. So hopefully we'll get a chance to see that. And it's going to be Vince's first practice of the season, so he might be a little bit more talkative about practice and what he sees. And I'll probably kind of cue him up for some stuff tomorrow to let him give his impressions, since you guys have heard from me for the last 2 days. So I'm looking forward to having Vince at practice tomorrow with me and kind of see how things go. So before we move on to our next conversation, folks, do me a favor, I wish I could do a live practice report, but I don't want to lose my credentials to Notre Dame. So appreciate the idea, buddy. But hey, here's what we want you guys to do. Do me a favor, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, share this podcast, give us a 5-star review. I would greatly appreciate that on all your favorite podcast platforms, and including Spotify, who's a great partner of ours and has been this year. So we really appreciate them. If you have not done so, sign up for the message board at boards.irishbreakdown.com. I always put my practice report first on the message board. Then I go in and write the story and tweet the story out. So you always get my practice reports first. And if you have any questions and things like that, not so much about what's not in there, because if I had notes on a guy that were worth putting in there, I'd put them in there. But if you want to, talk about kind of what I saw, ask questions, whatever the case may be. If I write a word that I think you should know, but you don't know, please feel free to ask. I'll clarify what that means and those type of things. So hopefully you guys enjoy that and check out today's practice report. We'll have a practice report tomorrow, and as we get closer and closer to kicking off the 2024 season. All right, let's go to part 2 of today's show, and we're going to talk about Gabriel Rubio's injury and kind of what comes next for Notre Dame. So to begin, obviously, Gabriel didn't practice at the end of yesterday's practice. We didn't really know why. We're not allowed to comment on injuries until we're given word on it, but we did get word today. They announced to the media right before practice started, and then obviously they put the tweet out that Gabriel injured his foot yesterday. And what Notre Dame said was, I'm going to read this. They said that he broke his second metatarsal and had a surgery performed by Dr. Thomas Bemmendorfer. And they said that they did not give us a specific timeline, so that's why I put indefinite on the story. They said, but they do anticipate having him back at some point in time in the 2024 season. So I don't know when that'll be. I don't know if that'll be September, October, November. It's, they did say they expect him back. Obviously, this is disappointing for the team and especially for Gabriel. From all of you that read my intel report, he came back this summer after missing the spring, being out of school, really locked in, really working hard, and really just wanted to, just be a part of what they're trying to build here. They were going to count on him a lot this season, and now you don't have him, and at least for a period of time, and that's disappointing for him and for Notre Dame because let's be honest, look, he was not as good overall as Howard Cross or Riley Mills last year. That's why he didn't start. But when it comes to just at times, he was arguably their most stout run defender. Now, he didn't make as many plays, but just as far as like being a big physical presence, eating up blocks, getting a push, I thought Gabriel did some nice things last year. And Notre Dame was not as good, in my opinion. And when it comes to rush defense, now they were so good rushing the quarterback, but when it comes to stopping the run, I didn't think they were as good when Gabriel didn't play. And I just think they were a better defense last year when Gabriel played. And now you're not going to have him for a period of time. You're definitely not going to have him for the matchup against Texas A&M, right? Because if, broke his foot out indefinitely some point in time, it usually doesn't sound good that he's going to be back for the first game. So that's going to be an issue for Notre Dame for sure. People in the chat saying Tom Bemmendorfer was a Penn High School and Notre Dame offensive lineman. That's awesome. I know Dr. Radigan also is a former Notre Dame player, so I think it's pretty cool to see former Notre Dame players having that kind of success off the field. So love to hear that. So, but let's back to the topic. It's a blow for Notre Dame. I'm not going to sit here and try to say it's not a blow. I'm going to say some things about, hey, I think they're going to be, this guy's going to do this and that guy's going to do that. But as I've always said, it's better to have this guy, that guy, and the guy that either left the program or is injured. So they're a better defensive line when Gabriel Rubio is healthy. There's no question about that. And they're going to not have him healthy for a period of time. But let me give you a couple, in my opinion, silver linings, and then I'm going to get into specifics of the players mentioned. If they can handle the time period where he's out, if they can handle that, and other guys step up, and not in a way where Riley and Howard have to now play the same amount of snaps they did last year, but if other guys can step into the rotation and perform the job that's needed, then I think this could end up being a little bit of a blessing because Gabriel's a bigger kid, 310 pounds, big guy. You've got a 16-game season coming up. If he can get back somehow in the second half of the season, then you're going to have a fresh set of legs and some beef on the defensive line. So, that's some spin, but it's also true that if you can get by without him in the meantime, being able to plug him back into the lineup in the second half of the year, hopefully, if that's when he comes back, again, that's conjecture on my part, it's going to be good for them because he'll be fresh and he won't have the same wear and tear on his body that maybe they had early in the season. So the other one is obviously get some other younger guys opportunity to get reps in practice and helps them develop a little bit faster. So those are the two sort of like silver lining type of situations for Notre Dame. The concern, however, is that whenever you lose a guy, it always hurts your depth from the standpoint of now you can't afford to lose another guy. And you had really going in the season, you had 5 guys that you were comfortable being part of the rotation because of what they have done, right? You had Howard Cross, Riley Mills, Gabriel Rubio, Jason Onye, Donovan Heinisch. Those 5 guys, as intel reports showed, and then also, of course, last season, those 5 guys were going to play. And you had some depth. Well, now you're down to 4, which means with 5, you can handle an injury. Okay, so Gabriel's out. They should be okay, with the 2 guys that we talked about, plus some other young guys that I'll get into. But now you're in a situation when you lose a guy this early, it's going to press your depth. It's going to definitely press your depth a little bit. And now other guys are going to have to step up. And just because it creates opportunities for certain players doesn't mean that they always take advantage of it. So with Gabriel out, you've lost your biggest defensive tackle, that at least of the veterans. You're losing arguably your best run defender and a guy that brings a great motor, to be honest with you. I mean, as he's gotten older, his motor's really been good. And so in that regard, it's a loss. It's definitely a loss, and they're going to have to figure out a way to overcome it. Because as a coach, you go into the season thinking, this is my plan. I got this guy available. I got that guy available. I'm going to go in the season, and this is my plan. Well, then first day you lose a guy for an extra period of time, and you kind of gotta reorganize everything. And so what is it going to look like if that happens? The plan, of course, is you want to be able to do that without having to then add reps back to Riley Mills and Howard Cross. That's the goal. End of the day, if nobody steps up to take over those reps or snaps, then you just give them to Howard and Riley. That's just what you do. It's like you'd love to play depth. And when I mean what you do, I'm talking about against A&M, Louisville, Florida State, teams like that. You can play anybody against Northern Illinois and Miami of Ohio, and you should be good. But I'm talking like the big games, who's going to be that guy against A&M? Okay, well, we're just going to have to play 15, 20 more snaps of Howard or Riley in some combination unless somebody else kind of steps up and proves it. So obviously that's one goal or one thing you could do. Hopefully that's not the case. Hopefully what you want to have happen, your ultimate goal, if you're Al Washington and you're Al Golden, is you want multiple players to kind of step up and say, hey, no, we'll take Gabriel's reps and we'll give you the production that you were going to get from him. We'll give you the level of impact play that you would have got from him. And so here's basically some candidates. Obviously, Jason Onye is a rotation guy already. Right now, going into the season, Jason was part of that number 2 D line behind Riley Mills and Howard Cross. He's a guy that's played both nose and 3 technique the last couple seasons. This past year, obviously, he was listed at times as the nose. Later in the year, we saw him playing more 3. This year in fall camp or in the spring ball, he was playing a lot of 3. Gabriel was expected to play more of the nose when he came back in the fall, which he did early. But Jason Onye is a guy that can play both. I mean, they're in a certain situation, if there's a potential to where, let's say, if you're talking about, say, 65 snaps between the 2 positions, right? So 65 at nose and 65 at 3 technique. There's a world in which, Howard played 40 and Riley played 40. And so then it knows you've got 25 more snaps. So let's say that Gabriel was going to give you 15 snaps at nose and Donovan was going to give you 10. And then Jason was going to give you 20 snaps at the 3 technique. And, Donovan and Gabriel maybe as a rotation would give you 15. Well, now there's a situation where you've got, let's say, 20 snaps or so from Gabriel that you got to find a way. Let's say 25 snaps from Gabriel that you got to figure out a way to replace. Well, some of those can be Jason Onye. So if Jason Onye is able now, the year under his belt, to say, hey, listen, I'm going to play some at nose. I'm going to play some at 3 technique. So I'm not just Riley Mills as number 2. I can be the number 2 behind Howard Cross as well. And so that's obviously an option. It's also the possibility that Donovan Heinisch could be that guy and take some, hey, look, I'm the number 2 nose now. You give me all those reps. So I'll take the 5 to 10 I was going to give, and I'll take the 15 to 20 that Gabriel was going to give at those 2 positions. And so he could certainly do that as well. Or it could be a combination of the 2 of them where simply Donovan slides in and he takes, let's say, half, but I'm just kind of giving you an example of just the snap totals. But let's say Donovan takes 5 to 10, 15 of those, and Jason takes 10 of those. And what that means is instead of Donovan playing 10 snaps, and maybe now he plays 20, or instead of Jason playing 15 to 20 snaps, now maybe he plays 30 between the 2 positions. And so certainly an opportunity for those 2 guys to get more opportunities. And if they play well, then you should be good. And we saw those two guys last year perform well. I mean, when you look at Notre Dame last year and how well I thought that they played at times last season on the D line against the run, I think those two guys stepped up and helped this football team out last season. Because you had Gabriel against Ohio State, you had him, but you didn't have him. In certain other games, I thought D line played really well against Central Michigan. He didn't play a ton there. Other guys had to step up and perform. Donovan at times last year had to step up and perform and be the guy. But as we've talked about before, a lot of those guys didn't play a ton of snaps last year. And you look at the defensive interior, you had 610 snaps for Howard Cross, 535 for Riley Mills. Your next highest snaps on the inside was Jason Onye at 155. Gabriel Rubio only played 135 snaps last year, 136 snaps last year, according to Pro Football Focus. Donovan only played 100 snaps last year. You needed those guys to take over more snaps anyway. Now you need them to not only take over more snaps themselves, but you need them to take over more snaps from Riley and when I say themselves, like from Riley and Howard. But now you need them to take more snaps away from for themselves as well, and that's or from Gabriel, and that's going to be a big part of what they're trying to do. There's some other players that obviously are going to get a chance. Now, here's the question with some of these guys. With some of these D linemen we're about to talk about, are they guys that fill that void against Northern Illinois and Miami, Ohio, Navy, maybe Virginia? Or are they guys can also help fill the void against Texas A&M and Louisville and Florida State? That's going to be a question. Because you should still be able to limit the reps for the starters against Northern Illinois and Miami, Ohio without Gabriel Rubio. That shouldn't be an issue. The question is do they now got to play 50, 60 snaps against Texas A&M? That's really what we have to figure out and what we have to see what Notre Dame is going to do. Because if you look at like Howard Cross last year, played 58 snaps against NC State, 64 against Ohio State, 57 against Duke, 60 against Louisville, 55 against USC, 65 against Clemson. That's way too many snaps. Way too many snaps for a defensive tackle. As I've pointed out before, Michigan starters, none of them played 500 snaps. And I think only one of them, I'm going to pull it up again, but I think only one of them, according to Pro Football Focus, even played over 450. Actually, none of them played over 450. The most snaps they had from an interior defensive tackle last year was Mason Graham at 442. Howard Cross had 610. Riley Mills had 535. Riley Mills, same thing, 49 snaps against NC State, 50 against Ohio State, 52 against Duke, 52 against Louisville, 50 against USC, 62 against Clemson. Those are a lot of snaps. You need their snaps to go down, but you can't do that if other guys don't make plays when they're in there. So your hope is that Gabriel and Donovan and Jason could go in there and take on some of those reps. Well, now Gabriel's reps have to be figured out too. And so as I'm trying to explain, you have to find a way to be good enough with your twos to where you don't have to play 62 snaps with your starters against A&M and 55 to 62 snaps against Louisville and Florida State. And that's why these guys got to step up. And the more that can step up, the better it's going to be. So who are some of the players behind Jason Onye and Donovan Heinisch? And that's what we're gonna kind of look at next. First guy that kind of is on my mind when you just think about just beef, right? Just pure beef. There's two guys that really, not one, two guys really that to me I'm looking for as far as just that nose. Yesterday at practice, when Gabriel went down, a guy that stepped in and got a lot of reps is Armel Mukam. Redshirt freshman Armel Mukam. Now, Armel's missed a lot of time in his first year at Notre Dame. He missed a lot of time in the fall with a shoulder injury, and he missed the entire spring with a shoulder injury. So he's a little bit behind from a development standpoint. That's a problem. He doesn't have a lot of experience, and he's gained at least 40 pounds since he's been here. Now, here's the good news. My wife and I were eating dinner at Salsa's the other day. The Salsa's over between Grape and Maine. There's a salsa out by our house out in Granger, but we were doing some shopping over there, so we went and ate salsas over there. And in walks Junior Chilamaka and Ben Minnick and Armel Mukum. So I got a chance, and Devin Houston. So I got a chance to see Armel, and he is big. I mean, just a big kid. But it looked good. It didn't look like he had got fat. He just is really filled out his frame, and he's like really big arms, really big chest. He's put a lot of good weight on. Now, what I don't know if it's from a stamina standpoint, he can handle that much weight, or I should say how well he can handle that much weight. I don't know the answer to that right now yet. But he does provide beef. He's a legitimate 300 plus pounds now. Armel is like legitimate, like good 300 plus pounds. Loved his upside coming out. He was my number 2 upside guy on defense in that class in 2023. Athletic kid, shows a good first step still. From what I've seen from him, this is an opportunity for Armel to step in, because Armel's more of a true nose. I don't know that Devin Houston is that right now. Sean Sevillano is a true nose. So these are the guys that are kind of battling to just directly take Gabriel's reps in from the standpoint of, can they be that big-bodied, eat-up space type of guy that can be that run defender? That's asking a lot of Armel, because like I said, he hasn't played a lot of football. So he's going to if he's going to be that guy, he's going to have to grow up in a hurry. Now, the good news for him, not for Gabriel, but the good news for him is that this creates more rep opportunities for him. And so we're going to see if he can kind of take it on. Now, a guy that we saw in the spring get a lot of reps, partly because Armel and Gabriel were both out in the spring. Gabriel wasn't in school, and Armel was out with the shoulder injury. So in walks Sean Sevillano, who was like 340 pounds. He slimmed down a little bit. Didn't get a chance to see a lot of him yesterday or today. So I don't know how he's doing so far in fall camp. I can't see everybody. But he's another guy that now gets an opportunity to say, hey, I can be that guy. I can be that run stuffer. I can give you, 10, 15 snaps a game in that role. So now, instead of, let's say you've got 25 snaps to take over a nose, let's say Donovan was going to give you 15, or Gabriel was going to give you 20 of those, and you had another 5 by Donovan. Well, now Donovan can maybe take 10 of them. So he's now got 15 of those 25 backup snaps at nose. And maybe, maybe Donovan or Armel could take those 10, or Sevillano can take those 10. Or maybe, they take 5 each or 10 each. And then now you can maybe play Donovan also a little bit at 3 technique as part of that. So now Rubio is your number. Onye is your number 2 3 technique, and now Donovan can maybe get a little work at the 3 technique, and maybe so those are potential options as far as like those guys, if they can take over some of those legit nose reps, especially on early downs, then I think that helps alleviate some of this problem. But that's asking 2 guys that have never played a meaningful snap of college football to step up and play. And I don't even know. I'm going to look this up. I don't even know if I think Armel played a game last year. Just give me a second. I'm looking at the snap count for Pro Football Focus. Yeah, he played 6 snaps last year. I believe that was against Wake Forest. Yes, it was against Wake Forest. He played 6 snaps. So this is a kid that's only got 6 snaps of football under his belt, who only played 8 or 9 games as a senior at a private school in Virginia. So he's got a long way to go, but there's talent there. He's big. He's athletic for his size. And so now it's up to Coach Washington to kind of coach him up and get him ready to play. A couple other guys to keep an eye on. I don't know where Brendan Vernon is at overall. I did see Brendan make a couple nice wins yesterday in one-on-ones and team. Perhaps Brendan Vernon can now maybe take on some of those, those 3 technique reps. I still think Brendan's best position is probably big end, but maybe this is a chance for him to take some of those reps. I think this is an opportunity also for Devin Houston to take some of those reps. But again, here's the issue. So, I love Brendan Vernon's potential. I love Devin Houston's potential. Devin had a really nice play yesterday during a team period where he went in and made a play. He's got some energy. He's got some ability. He's over 290 now, so he's got some size he brings to the table. Not as much as Armel and Sevillano and Gabriel, but he's starting to fill out and get to that 290 plus range. And he's a guy that I liked coming out of high school. So maybe he can take on some of those those 3 technique reps. Maybe those 2 guys can take some of those. Donovan could take some of those, and now maybe you can use Onye a little bit more at the nose if you need to have him there. So, that's something that you can look at as potentially with those 2 guys. Maybe you have Brennan play more of 3 technique, although I'd still, like I said, I'd like to see him play outside more. Cole Mullins maybe could take some of those reps. I think it's probably a year too early, but I know the Notre Dame staff loves Cole Mullins. I just don't know if he's physically ready to play there yet. But this kind of gets us in a guy that I thought could have maybe stepped in a situation like this was Quentin Autry, who transferred in from Columbia. He's a guy that I thought, look, you could get 5-10 snaps out of this guy against, kind of not quite as much as what Chris Smith gave a couple years ago because Quentin Autry wasn't as big. The problem is Quentin Autry's injured right now, and he's not in practice. So that's another blow that you could have potentially had because he brings more of that experience. The issue that Notre Dame has is outside of like Onye and Heinisch, all these other guys that we're talking about are all young. Devin Houston's a redshirt freshman. Armo Mukum's a redshirt freshman. Sean Sevillano's a true freshman. Brendan Vernon's a redshirt freshman. Cole Mullins is a true freshman. There's this big gap between the vets and then the young guys on this roster because of some recruiting misses in other years. So that's I'll be honest, a little bit of a concern for me is that lack of here's that veteran presence to just kind of throw out there now. It's Heinisch, Onye, and then big drop off in experience for Notre Dame. And that's something that I find to be a little bit concerning as we kind of dive into what comes next. So I don't know what the answer is going to be. I don't know who's going to step up. I don't know how it's going to shake out. I don't think anybody does right now because this was an injury they weren't prepared for. Now they got to figure that out. So we're going to see kind of who steps up here over the next few weeks. That's going to be one of the more intriguing camp stories for me now is does anyone step up inside now that Gabriel Rubio's out without you having to say, okay, Riley, Howard, sorry, man, you guys are going to have to play 60, 50 plus reps a game now. Again, sorry. Sucks for you. Hopefully you can make it through 16-game schedule. Ideally, you just don't want to do that. You don't. If anything, you want to take reps away from them from what they did last year because of the potential for an extended season. You really need those guys to step up. Now, the good news is I am excited about what Onye and Heinisch have done this offseason. Jason Onye had a great spring. So I think those 2 guys alone can take some of those reps, but can they handle all of them that were gone? And then who kind of comes in and maybe can be that next in line guy to give some beef? Because I could see a scenario where Onye and Heinisch simply just take over the reps that Rubio would have given, just from pure reps. That's fine. Those are good players. But do they give you the unique skill set that Gabriel brought to the table? I mean, Jason Onye is very disruptive. But can he be a guy that you just go in there and say, hey, go be beefy, go kick that center's butt for 20 snaps against this team? That's not really Jason's game. That's not Donovan's game. Their game is different. Does anyone give that specific that role? And that's why I talked first about Armel and Sevillano, because they have the potential to be that. They have the potential to be that, hey, 300-plus pound guy, go in there and for 10 snaps a game, 15 snaps a game, just give that center heck. Just battle his butt, make him hate life for the 10 snaps you're in the game. Hopefully somebody can step up and give you that type of role and a goal line type of situation, a short yardage type of situation, or just early down, first and second down, fight like heck with that center and that guard and make those guys stay on you. If they're double teaming you, make them stay on you. Don't let them get off that double team and let those linebackers run and feast. That ultimately is what you hope one of those young guys can do. So that's my take on that. We did have some super chats before we get out of here, and I want to bring those up before we hit the road. We got a with your chest with a super chat. Appreciate you very much. It says fans overreacting about 5 periods of practice is still way better than fans overreacting to recruiting. That is a great point. I know there's a lot of questions in the chat and people watching about Deuce Knight. Not commenting about Deuce Knight on the show. There's no point. We're talking about fall camp, but I do have some intel pieces on the board about Deuce Knight, so you can kind of get my thoughts on what's going on there. And if you want to know my opinion of what's going on with Deuce Knight, just ask. I'll tell you on the board, on the premium board, but I'm keeping that off of this channel for now, because right now I just want to focus on fall camp. I'm over talking about I'm over talking about recruiting right now. I'm over talking about Deuce Knight and what's going on there, and just going to let it play out. And from the show standpoint, and I'll talk about things later. But if you want to know where the thoughts or the latest message boards at irishbreakdown.com is the place to be to that. But yeah, I'm with you on this, man. I'd much rather us have some dramatic overreactions to a day or two of practice than recruiting. I would always rather talk about the team than recruiting. I know there's a lot of people that would much rather talk about recruiting. I'm not. I care more about what's here, not what might be here. So that's certainly a true thing there. Charlie Weiss's last belt loop with a super chat. Thank you, Charlie. Showing love. Appreciate you, man. And I did get your DM about your little incident with that person the other day. That's hilarious, man. Just not surprising at all, though. Not surprising at all. So Iden Benami, thank you for your super chat. Iden, the thing I'm most excited about from yesterday was the communication you mentioned. To me, that's a huge, great sign and a great intangible for winners. I agree with you. Absolutely agree with you on that one, buddy. So, man, I appreciate you all very much today, guys. I know a little bit shorter show today, but just wanted to kind of get the practice report out and talk about what's going on with Gabriel. We'll be back next week with some, getting into, because there's a lot of things we were going to cover this summer regarding the team that we didn't get to intentionally, because once we saw what our availability was going to be, and there's not a lot, and it's all condensed into, for the most part, a short period of time. Not complaining, not saying it's good or bad. I'm just commenting. We had to kind of alter our schedule and get down to, okay, we're going to have a lot more open periods in between, we're getting 3 of our 6 full practices we're seeing are in the first 3 days. So, after tomorrow, we're going to have 3 or 4 availabilities, and they still got 20 plus practices left. So a lot of stuff we decided to shift into in August, so when we could kind of talk about it leading into the season. So excited about that, and working on, what we're going to do in season this year, since I don't have Ryan anymore. And if you guys haven't checked it out, go check out Ryan's Twitter page, Rise and Draft. He's putting content out from what he's doing at A&Z Sports. Excited about what he's doing. He and I were talking today about Notre Dame and some different things. So check out what he's doing. But obviously, we're going to have to alter a little bit kind of our plan. I'm excited about some of the things that we're going to do. Just got a commitment from somebody that's going to come on our Thursday show when we do predictions, and we're going to talk some national stuff. And so I'm going to have a national college football writer that's going to join us on Thursdays to preview some of the games of the big games of the weekend. So I'm excited about that. I'm going to announce hopefully later today 2 new hires of writers, team writers for Notre Dame that I'm hoping to get on the show from time to time. One of them, who I'm excited, I almost said his name. One of them excited about, who's going to do some shows with me, and he's a guy that's going to cover the team. So I'm very excited about that as well. So we'll hope to announce those here very soon. Still looking for some recruiting writers. I've got a bunch of resumes I still got to go through. I wanted to handle it a couple weeks ago. It's been so slammed with everything else, but I'm hoping to get on that here over the next week and finish putting that recruiting team together. Hope to have Nick on the show here at some point in time soon. Nick Kramer's obviously already writing for us, but we just kind of going to get through this fall camp here. So August is going to be slammed. I'm excited about all the things we got coming on in August. It's going to be a lot of fun, and no Beefeater, that is not who is coming on the show. That's very well played, my friend. But that will not be our national writer. We only have people that we take seriously on the show, but that's not who it is. So I'm excited about what we got going on. So anyway, that's it for today's show, everybody. IB Nation Sports Talk tonight at 5 o'clock. Vince and I will be back tomorrow, 1 o'clock. We'll kind of wrap up practice. We'll dive into our mailbag. So get ready for those questions that you have. And then next week, we'll get back on track with like buy-sell holds and our Big 12 preview and things like that, and Notre Dame opponent previews and Notre Dame team and all that kind of stuff. So we're very excited to do all that. So thanks for being with me today, folks. Appreciate you all so much. Have an awesome rest of your day, and we'll talk to you guys again on the Irish Breakdown Podcast.